Yeah, old school. That's what I'm talking about. Listen, this ain't for everybody. Some of y'all need to hear this. I know you're in the trenches fighting, but check it out. I'm gonna put it down like this so I can help the saints understand. Everything you're going through is all part of the master plan. Or what? You thought cause you got saved everything was gonna be peaches and cream? You better wake up, son. Don't nothing come to a sleeper but a dream. Faith without works is dead. Read your Bible, you know what it says. He who don't work don't eat. Blackers don't get fed. Yeah, Jesus said he who puts his hand to the plow looks back the same ain't fit. Some of y'all ain't been in the trenches 5 minutes and you about ready to quit. I ain't mad at ya, I'm just hitting you with the real. If you died for me and I was still tripping, now how you think that make you feel? Check this out, deep game, this here's deep. Some of y'all ain't sawing nothing but you started trying to reach. But after him who is able to position fathers by his glory. Struggles might be part of your testimony, but it ain't the end of the story. Now the point is this was prophesied way back in the day. Choir, sing your hook right here and see if the church can relate.
I know we can make it. Oh, we can make it. I know good and well. God can work it out. He'll work it out. Work it out. Yeah, he'll work it out. I know we can make it. We can make it. I know good and well. God can work it out. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Yeah.
Thinking not strange, the fiery trials were to try you. You say, why you? But your church say, what would Jesus do? Why you asking if he ain't trying to do what he's saying? He told you he was going to have tribulations, but you thought he was playing. 1 minute you're telling how good God is and can't nobody beat the talk. The next minute you're backsliding so fast, it's like you're moonwalking. Oh yeah, I'm preaching to myself because I ain't no better. It ain't like I've been following his every word, obeying it to the letter. But we soldiers, we got to remember that. Regroup, stay on point. Yeah, bow down, confess, repent, stay humble, let him anoint. It ain't easy as I thought it was. I'd be lying if I told you that. But it showed up getting better all the time. Trust me, that's the fact. Ain't nothing we going through that can't be handled. God put that on his son. Like they say, you can shout now if you want to, cause the battle's already won. So while you're going through the valley, don't even trip. You're gonna be on top. Choir, sing the hook line one more again. This time you don't stop.
I know we can make it. We can make it. I know good and well. God can work it out. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. He'll work it out. We can make it. I know we can make it. I know good and well. Oh, yeah. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. If you let him, I know good and well. He can work it out. 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 Oh, he'll work it out. Work it out. Oh.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. This is your host, Lamont Patterson. You're listening to Can a Player Play? I just had to give a moment or two to a big boy upstairs because I know with his will, with his grace, with his blessings, we're going to be able to work this thing out called life, you know, because we really need him right about now because there's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going out there in the world, you know what I'm saying? And we do hope wherever you are, wherever you may be, you are definitely trying to be safe, and that's first and foremost. Today we have a fantastic show lined up for today. Miss Stephanie J. Miller, who's the author of Zero Waste Living, the 80-20 Way, The Busy Person's Guide to a Lighter Footprint. Miss Miller, 25-year career at the International Finance Corporation, the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. She served as director of IFC's Climate Business Department, where she led global teams to find innovative solutions to climate change, and which is definitely needed. With that being said, let me see as I guess with us. Miss Miller, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine. How are you today?
Great, and it's great to be with you, Lamont.
I'm so happy to hear you, and I know you have a wealth of information to share with our listeners, and I know they have their pen and paper out ready to take notes to see what they could do to help save this planet, you know, and I'm one of them. You know, I got my pen and paper out too.
That's great. Me too. And if your listeners have ideas, I'll take notes too.
Yeah, because collectively, maybe, just maybe, we might be able to save this planet. You know, I always had a crazy thought yesterday, Miss Miller, about these rockets and stuff, this, you know, blasting and doing all that good stuff. And I had this thought that, is that stuff kind of messing with our climate a little bit, going through the atmosphere and stuff? What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, those are pollutants as well, for sure.
Yeah,
We
I
have
don't
to
know
look at
how,
everything. Yeah.
right. And it seemed like that would be a big thing to look at, you know?
Yeah, well, because I focus on the individual, that's not something I talk a lot about because I try to keep it within the scope of what we can do, the regular folks like me and you. But yes, those are the things you're talking about definitely cause pollution, and we should be someone should be thinking about that as well.
Instead of us little people, huh? But that was just a common sense thought, because I was thinking about that yesterday, doing all this good stuff, and, you know, I had some plants that was going on that I was growing actually in the backyard, and they're dying, you know, and where I live, you know, we have a serious amount of overcast in the morning and a lot of moisture in the air, and I'm wondering how does that affect, you know, the plant life, you know, stuff that we can't even control.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that's seeping in somehow as well.
Yes. Well, can I call you Stephanie by any chance?
Yes, please call me Stephanie.
Okay, Stephanie. If zero waste living is a personal lifestyle choice, how does it have the potential to transform the planet?
Yeah. So, well, the transformation that we can talk about is with what I focus on is the climate and the waste crises, and those need to be solved. Those two twin crises need to be solved by basically three different actors: government, private sector, and the individual. And so zero waste living, this idea of drastically reducing your consumption in your waste, that's up to the individual. And what I like to say is it can be transformational if we focus on the right things, if we focus on those things that we have time to focus on and that can have a really big impact. And the second reason...
Can you give us an example of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we, you know, for example, I used to work at the World Bank. I used to fly for my job a lot, and flying for my job was not something that's a pretty impactful thing in terms of climate change, but that's not something I had a lot of control over. If I was going to keep my job, I was going to have to keep getting on the plane. But there are so many things that we do have control over that make a really big difference. So I'll just give you one example right now, and we can get into some others as well. But food waste. I think you had my colleague Alan Miller on your show recently, and he's no relation to me, same last name, no relation, but, you know, he talks about super climate pollutants. And I think on your show he talked about methane, this climate pollutant that is 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide in terms of warming the planet. So one of the major causes of methane production, that's a greenhouse gas, is landfill. Landfills are a huge contributor to greenhouse gases. And the major part of landfill pollution is from food waste. So I didn't know that, even when I was leading climate change at the World Bank. It's huge. And here's the really interesting opportunity in that I didn't know this. I don't know if you know this, but most of the food waste that happens in this country and in most rich countries happens at the household level. So I thought probably most of it happens, you know, at the farm level, or when you transport food from the farm to food service businesses like, you know, hotels, retail, restaurants. But 40% of food waste happens at the household level. So that's a big problem, but it also means if anyone's going to solve that problem, we, the individual, are the biggest part of the solution. So I guess what I would say is zero waste living is a personal lifestyle choice, and it can transform the planet if we focus on the right things. And then also we have the power, so much power that we don't realize, to influence those around us if you start doing some cool new thing in your life and you talk to your family about it or you post about it on social media, we're all social animals. So we will pay attention to what you're doing, especially you, Lamont, right? You have a wide reach, and that means that other people will start to think of changing their own behavior. So that's what's exciting, is that contagion effect that can happen when we make these choices.
Yes, so very true. I just one quick, Stephanie. For the listeners just joined us, of course, you know the call-in number is 646-929-2870, and press number 1 on your phone. Let us know that you're there, and we will be glad to let you join the conversation. It's very important that we learn and try to do some of these things, you know, if not for us now, for the next generation, because we do need to make some changes. All right. Well, Stephanie, what led you to embark on this zero waste journey?
Yeah, well, as you said in your introduction, I was leading climate change at the private sector part of the World Bank. So it was my job to help governments and private sector get on a more sustainable path. But I really didn't feel like I was doing enough in my personal life, and I just didn't feel like I had time. I was busy. I'd come home tired. And I finally quit my career after 25 years. I decided I'd take a gap year, you know, some time off before my son headed off to college. And I decided I'd use some of that time that I suddenly had to do research and figure out what I could do in my own personal life to kind of address my personal carbon and waste footprint. And the very first thing I did, this is what embarked me on the journey, is I went into my local dry cleaners, a place I'd been going every Saturday to drop off my suits that needed to be dry cleaned. And I asked them, because the plastic that they used to put those clothes in always bothered me. I asked them, would they mind putting my clothes, when they're clean, into my own garment bag that I brought with me? And they said, yes, no problem. You know, I was a longtime customer. They didn't want to upset me. I made this request. They said yes. And then I sort of scratched my head and I realized, well, if they're willing to do that, I wonder, and I asked them a couple weeks later, would they be willing to offer these reusable bags or some reusable bags to their other clients to make it easier for other people who might be bothered by the plastic? And they did. They agreed to do it. The program, they adopted this reusable bag program, offered this to their clients. If you walk in now, a third of their clients use these, you know, dark green reusable bags. So that's what got me started, and it gave me the itch to see, well, what else could I do besides, you know, help my local dry cleaners get on a more sustainable path. But that was the very beginning. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
No, I was saying that's great. You were definitely thinking outside of the box on that one.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you for a few seconds, but yeah, it was a fun challenge, and then the pandemic hit. So I'm hoping we can get other dry cleaners to convert to this kind of program. But you know, that will address that soon when places are more flexible.
You know, that was a great idea, too, because I have a garment bag, and that's the only way I can keep my stuff organized, because I know it's dirty. I can put it in the bag and know where it is.
Oh, that's great.
So that's definitely a great idea. And I'm sure people out there listening is going to definitely bring that up to their local dry cleaners somewhere, for sure.
Yeah, and if they have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer. And my local Korean the couple that runs it, they've told me they're willing to answer anyone's questions on how they made it happen. It wasn't that hard, actually.
Right. So, Stephanie, what's been the hardest thing you've had to do to get to a zero-waste lifestyle?
Well, the hardest thing is realizing there's actually no zero in zero-waste lifestyle because you know, what happened is, you know, sometime after the dry cleaning story is I started reading, doing a lot of research. I read a lot of books by the original folks, the original people who got the zero waste movement going. And what you see when you look at their picture is they hold up a mason jar with trash in it, and that represents their family's trash for 1 year. And so that's not even zero, right? But that's pretty darn close. And I got so excited, and I had all this time on my hands, so I started doing a lot of the things they recommended, making my own household cleaner so I wouldn't have to buy household cleaner in plastic. And I did all sorts of things, but I was getting nowhere near zero. Even, a mason jar's worth of trash, I don't even get to that in 1 week, these days. So that was the hardest thing, to realize that yes, I could make a difference, but I wasn't going to get to zero. But that's also what inspired me in the end to write the book, Zero Waste Living, the 80-20 Way. I borrowed this concept from my old workplace, and I'm sure some of your listeners have heard of the 80-20 rule. It's this idea that if you do the 20% most impactful things, you could get to 80% of the results you're looking for. And, in my business, we used to talk about focus on the 20%, the 20 most important clients, and we'll get 80% of our business done, that sort of thing. And so I set out to try to figure out what was the 80-20 rule for zero waste living. So what were those things? Maybe it wasn't going to be making your own household cleaner, but what were those things that met at the intersection of ease and impact, so that busy people like I had been and I was going to be again, and I am now, could actually incorporate this stuff into their lives and not feel like they had to quit their job to do this stuff. And I came up with 3 areas that I feel if people focus on these 3 things, they can be very sure they're having an impact. And I can just tell you what those are. We can delve into them. But the 3 areas are focusing around food. There are quite a few things people can do easily around food to make a really big difference. We talked about food waste, so that part of it is addressing the food waste issue. Secondly is around purging plastics. And third is around recycling right. And taking just some modest actions in those 3 areas, I truly believe, based on my research and based on my own personal experience, can make a dramatic difference in our own personal contribution. As I said in your answer to your first question, and then there's the power of influencing, those ripple effects of influencing others in our lives through our actions, which is really exciting.
What do you recommend to people as the best way to start? And I think I had another one, too, in regards to the food. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't about the food. It was about recycling, because I think you mentioned recycling right.
Yeah.
What is recycling right versus recycling wrong? Because a lot of people think they can take the soda cans and plastic and just take them to a recycle place and that's it. So what is recycling right?
Right. So recycling right is just simply knowing your municipality's rules. And about 60% of folks in the U.S. have access to residential recycling. I assume you do where you are in California. And California is a trendsetter on this in so many ways. California, by the way, just passed a really interesting piece of legislation that will address some of the problems we have with the recycling system, including not allowing companies to put those chasing triangle numbers on products that aren't actually recyclable, because there are many that are not. But recycling right is if you put only the things, for those of us who do have access to residential recycling, if you recycle according to the rules of your municipality, and they're really easy to look up online because they want you to get it right, then you are making sure that you're not wish cycling. And wish cycling is the opposite of recycling right. It's when you that moment when you hover over the recycling bin because you're hoping that this thing that you're pretty sure is plastic and therefore probably recyclable will get recycled. Well, only 8.7% of plastics get recycled. So chances are, if you're putting it in, it's not getting recycled. So let's focus on putting in the things in the bin that can be recycled. Because if you don't get it right, then a lot of things can happen, including, well, the worst thing that can happen, I think, is that you can cause worker injury. There are some items like plastic grocery bags that don't belong in any residential recycling program that I'm familiar with. And if then the reason is because they can muck up the whole system, get caught in the rollers, and cause worker injury as they're trying to remove it. But at the least, you may be causing contamination of the rest of the recycle load if you put something in that doesn't belong there. And it's different in different jurisdictions. But I will say, this China in 2018 started rejecting what we were sending to them in terms of bales of recyclable material because it was so contaminated. It wasn't in a form that could be recycled. So recycling right is important. And I'll just give you one example of how much benefit there can be from recycling right. Your aluminum can of soda or water, whatever or maybe a cat food or dog food tin, that aluminum can is recyclable, extremely recyclable. There's a market for it. But if that has to be produced from virgin materials where they mine the ores and produce it, it's 95% more energy intensive to produce from scratch than to recycle that aluminum can. So we're doing a very big disservice if we don't put those aluminum cans into the recycle bin. And at the same time, you don't want to put the wrong things in because they could ruin the aluminum can. So recycle right is just getting that piece of it, nailed. And it's not that hard.
How do we educate the average person on the right things that's recyclable versus, the ones that you're speaking of?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in any jurisdiction in the U.S., if you Google recycling rules near me, you will almost surely come up with your jurisdictions, and what county you live in and who recycles. You're in Redondo Beach, California, is that right?
Correct.
So if I Googled Redondo Beach, California recycling rules, I'm pretty sure I could quickly come up with that poster, that awareness-raising promotional thing that they produce because they want you to get it right. They want you to put the right things in. There's a lot that needs to be done systemically to fix the recycling system and make it easier for consumers to use. But at a minimum, we should be checking out those rules. And, at a maximum, it's what I said before, California is starting to address some of the problems with labeling because the labeling is so confusing. I mean, we would all be, it's understandable that we would be confused. A lot of people think if they see that chasing arrows symbol on a piece of packaging, that means it is recyclable. And very often that's simply not true. If you just look at plastic, it's called I won't bore you with the specific technical details, but resin identification codes 1 through 7, 1 and 2 are things that are often very recyclable. That's your plastic water bottle, for example, or your shampoo bottle. Those are really easily recyclable. And then those are 1s and 2s. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are not very recyclable. They might be accepted in your recycle bin, but they probably are not going to end up getting recycled because there isn't a good market for them. And if no one's willing to buy those bales of plastic from your municipal recycling facility, they're going to end up in the landfill. And in fact, 75% of plastic ends up in the landfill.
Seem like this it requires, in order to do it right, seem like it requires some definitely homework on individuals' part just to educate themselves versus, the good, bad, and the good, bad, recycling practices, because the average individual don't really think about that. They just use plastic and they just throw it over there. You know what I mean? A can. They don't really think about the other part of it, and it seems like, to me, that's going to be an issue just to educate people, as far as you're saying, and to do it the right way versus the wrong way. Because everybody's using plastic. They don't know that there's a good plastic versus a bad plastic.
Right. So if your listeners take away just one thing, I hope it's that whenever they can, and we can talk more about plastics, but whenever they can avoid plastic and choose a different kind of packaging, they're doing all sorts of good for all sorts of reasons we'll get into. And that aluminum can, again, is like the poster child of what can be easily recyclable. If you put an aluminum can in your residential recycling bin, on average, it's melted down and back on your shelf in the grocery store within 60 days. So there's a great market for it. It's a really efficient process. If you get like LaCroix water, buy it in aluminum cans. Don't buy it in the plastic bottles. That would be one easy takeaway. But you're absolutely right. We shouldn't all have to become recycling experts to do the right thing. So I would say don't spend a lot of time on this, but just find those easy-to-find rules. They're usually on a pretty, they compile it with pictures on a page. At least that's true in, every place in my region. And you can quickly see what are the do's and don'ts.
What I've noticed a lot, Stephanie, on the movie sets, I've been seeing a lot of cardboard and the cans of water. Just, instead of plastic, they're using the little cardboard containers with water, and I thought that was kind of different, and I understood why they were doing it. But hopefully they'll start doing... Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's great to hear that you're seeing that in the entertainment industry, because I think that's a step in the right direction. If you have access to clean drinking water through your tap, then I think the best solution is to carry your own reusable water bottle and refill it with the tap water. But many people, even in this country, don't have access to good, clean water. And if they don't, of course they're going to buy their water, in some kind of container. But those cardboard containers and the cans of water are definitely better than the plastic. So I'm really glad to see that, and they're both recyclable. So I'm glad to hear that you're seeing that. That's terrific.
Yeah, seeing it a whole lot. But Stephanie, what do you mean people don't have access to good, clean water? They orbiting the Earth and going in space. What do you mean people don't have good, clean water?
Yeah, well, we've all heard of the Flint, Michigan kind of stories. There are, I think this new infrastructure bill would address some of the clean water repiping issues in this country. But that's what I'm saying. I don't like to assume, and that's what I also, just a general rule of thumb on zero waste living. There's no right way to do it, and I don't think any of us should be lecturing, myself first and foremost, anyone about what they should and shouldn't do. And even what I think of as a really easy step, which is replace what I did. I was going to an office setting. Every day I was buying 1 to 2 bottles of water in plastic. And that means over the course of a year, I was responsible for 600 or 700 bottles of water. The plastic, right? So that's awful. And what was I thinking? But in this jurisdiction where I live, the tap water is very drinkable. So there was no excuse that I had for what I eventually started doing, which is I got a nifty stainless steel bottle, and I started carrying that wherever I went. But there may be other areas of the country, or certainly in other countries, where access to clean water is not a given. So I don't want to be lecturing anyone about you must never buy water in a plastic bottle. If that's what all you have available to you, then certainly that's what you should do.
I'm still trying to find out who owns water, but that's another conversation.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. I read somewhere that most of the bottled water, most of it is tap water. They bottle tap water and then they sell it to you for a few dollars. It's crazy.
Yes. That's my thoughts exactly, because when I go back, well, who owns water? Well, who owns air? You know what I mean? So I'd rather you tell me I own the facility to put it in a container to give it to you. So that's what you're paying for. Do you remember when bottled water really became fashionable, and it was the thing to do to have a bottle of water in plastic?
Yeah.
And it seemed like everything went crazy, after that, because then another thing that you said I find very, very powerful, and even to the extent that a lot of people don't even think about that, the 2 bottles a day for a year. And if each one of us did that, 2, 3 to 4 bottles a day per person, a year, that's massive. That's crazy.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah. So that's why I always say, you have to start with something if you want to go down this zero waste path, and I really hope people do. And the easiest place to start is to pick one thing. Pick one thing that you buy that comes in single-use plastic. That's that stuff we just touch for a few seconds or a few minutes, and that chances are you could substitute that for a different kind of packaging, a more sustainable packaging. And then I truly believe that once you do that, you kind of get the bug to see what else you could reduce. That's what happened to me.
Yes. I think we just need to get more of our entertainment industry, sports figures, to adopt using different containers other than plastic. And also the other thing is to have our lawmakers, in terms of labeling, clearly label these products and have the receptacles clearly labeled so people will know what goes where. Because I think that's a major problem right there. People just don't know, what goes where. They just automatically just put it there. I was one of them. I'm glad you made that point, so I'll be a little bit more aware, of what I'm doing, because knowledge is power. If you know, then you could do better. But if you don't know, you kind of fall through that void.
Exactly.
You mentioned, Stephanie, shopping naked. And I don't want our fans. Hey, look, I don't want our fans out there, because I know I got some crazy ones. Look, I hope you don't mean going to the store literally naked. But can you explain to our listeners what you mean by that? I'm sorry, I'm acting silly.
Yes. Let me quickly explain before anyone gets the wrong idea. So again, if you go down this path and you try to think of, wow, you realize maybe it's the plastic water bottle, and then you think, what else could I eliminate that's plastic in my life? Well, it turns out that we can almost all buy our produce naked, meaning not packaged. And like my local Safeway, I don't know what your big grocery store chain is where you are, but my local Safeway sells side-by-side red peppers, orange peppers, yellow peppers in plastic, and right next to naked peppers. And so here's the thing. If you bring your own, most of us bring our own grocery bags into the grocery store these days. So if we're doing that, we might as well also bring our own reusable produce bags. And instead of using those plastic liners that I can never get open anyway in the grocery store.
We got to come up with some cool stuff, Stephanie, for the men, though, because I don't really see too many men going into the store with plastic bags. So we got to come up with some cool stuff for them to carry.
So I agree with you, but do you not carry your own grocery bags into the store? I bet you do.
Honestly, I do have a bag in the trunk of my car, but 9 times out of 10, I forget to get it out. And then they'll ask me, do I want to buy a bag? And then I'm looking at them crazy. Look, I just paid you for the food. Now I got to buy something to take it out of the store.
So my fiance will have to advise you on how he remembers. But he never forgets. And in fact, today we went to the grocery store earlier, and he said, "Oh, we need to go get the bags." So, it's like any habit, right? Once you get in, and they're in the trunk of our car, so they're always conveniently there. And then if you're doing that anyway, and then you add inside there a few of these produce bags, or you know what, you don't even need a bag. You can just take the red pepper, the green pepper, and just put it right in your cart. But if that grosses you out, or your listeners, and they want to do, this is what I do. I take my own cotton reusable bags, and I put the loose carrots, I put the loose peppers, I put whatever is available that isn't packaged in plastic. That's what I choose as my produce. And there's a lot available. I didn't realize you could get almost any produce unpackaged. So that's another, that's what I mean by shopping naked, lest we confuse your listeners or worry them.
Yes, I'm sure glad you explained that one, because, a lot of people in the music industry, they got some other thoughts going on. What do you mean?
We won't go there.
Exactly. So Stephanie, do you believe that we can recycle our way out of this waste problem?
No, I don't. So, we talked about the meaning. What I mean by that is, no, we can't recycle our way out of the waste problem for sure. We need to do more than just recycle right to address the waste problem. But, what I hope I've gotten across is that you don't want to ignore the recycling piece anyway, because there are big opportunities to save on virgin resources, trees when it comes to paper, cardboard, and on the energy used to produce a lot of the packaging materials, the water that's used to produce those materials. So we do want to get recycling right, but we just also have to be aware that, again, for decades, the average amount of recycling overall, not just plastic, is less than 9%, but overall our average doesn't go above 34%. So we're not doing that well, and we do need to reduce waste by other means, and we can't just assume we can recycle our way out of the problem.
All right, that was a great one also. So what do you do? Here's this other one that just jumped out at me too, because I know you're focused on the zero waste problem, and you mentioned your husband, so I'm sure he's focused on it as well. But how about your kids and your friends and everybody else that's not tuned into that?
Yeah, so, this is what I say. If you get the bug and you start doing this zero waste stuff and you get excited about it, you're going to have your eyes opened, and you're going to feel like you wish everybody else around you were doing the same things that you were. You're going to look at your friends with their Starbucks non-recyclable, non-reusable cups. You're going to look at your kid who's getting his soap out of a plastic soap pump, and you're going to say, oh, come on. Anyway, my point is, don't lecture. Don't shame people. I think the best way to convert people, if you will, to what you're doing is to show them how excited you are about it. And even just your behaviors sometimes are catchy, even without saying anything. I'll give you one quick example of that. I've stopped getting delivery of food because it was too much plastic coming into the house. So I start picking up food from our local Chinese, Thai, Indian, Greek restaurants, and I bring my own containers with me. And when I do, the people, whoever's near me that sees me pick up my food that they've placed in my own containers that I brought to them a few minutes earlier to the restaurant, they almost inevitably, someone will say, I didn't know you could do that. And so maybe next time they'll do it as well. Now, in your own household, this is what I recommend. You got to make it easy for people. So, for example, one of the ways that I try to reduce food waste is to check every day. I spend a couple minutes every morning checking what's about to go bad, and I bring it forward, maybe leftovers from a couple days before. I bring it forward, I put it in a transparent container, and I even have a shelf in the refrigerator that says, eat me first. Because I don't expect everyone else to be doing these fridge reviews I do. They're not into it that much. But I've made it easy for them now. When my son goes into the fridge, he can see, oh, yeah, that's the Chinese food we got a couple days ago. I better eat it today. They're sitting right there on that shelf.
On the eat me first shelf.
Yeah. So, labeling some things to make it easier. My fiance, knows that I've told him 1,000 times where this particular plastic goes. Is it acceptable in the recycle bin or not? And he knows that if he asks me the 1,001th time, I'm not going to yell at him. I'm just going to remind him. Hopefully I'll very gently, nicely remind him, oh, no, sweetheart, that's not where it goes. Now, maybe I don't always end up, in that great a mood about it, but I think if we make people feel bad about what we're trying to do, it's just not going to get people on board.
You gave me a great idea for holiday presents while I'm listening to you. I think that's what I'll end up doing. Instead of trying to give somebody something that they may not use anyway, you can give them a reusable water container with a filter or something in it.
That's a great idea.
That they could use, and you could, if your husband is a sports person, then you could put his favorite team on something, and then he'll know where it is.
I like the way you think. He's an Atlanta Braves fan. I see. I'm going to have to put an Atlanta Braves sticker on his water bottle now.
See, there you go. So now he'll know exactly where it is. You ain't got to worry about him throwing it away.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah, so that's a great idea for you guys out there listening. So you don't got to go spend a whole lot of money. If you don't know what to get somebody, get them a reusable container where they can drink their beverages out of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good one. So what else you got going on, Stephanie, that could help this planet?
Yeah, so, the first of these three themes I talk about is focus on food, and there's kind of two parts to that. One, we talked about a bit already, is food waste, and that's so important, as we said, because food waste that ends up in the landfill produces methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. And if you can keep it out of the landfill by either eating it or composting it, then you are making a very big contribution to avoiding that greenhouse gas source, right? So avoiding food waste is a really big one. But the other big one under food is a plant-rich diet. So if you're like me, when you hear that, you panic because you think, oh, I've got to be a vegan or a vegetarian. And if you're anything like me, then you're not. And I was raised to believe, it's not a complete meal unless there's meat as part of the dinner. And that's how I raised my son as well, who's now 19. So, but when you realize that the single biggest contribution that an individual can make to reducing their carbon footprint is by adopting a more plant-rich diet, then you kind of want to try to figure out what you can do. And if you don't go, here's a great example of 80-20. You don't have to go all the way to 100% vegetarian or vegan. And my hat's off to those of your listeners who are vegetarian and vegan, because they are making a really important contribution. But, if you throw up your hands and say, well, that I'm never going to become a vegetarian, so I might as well just eat whatever I want, you're missing a whole opportunity of just getting more vegetarian meals into your weekly diet. So I have a personal goal for this family, for my little family, of getting 4 vegetarian meals, dinners on the table every week. I'm pretty good about breakfast and lunch. Those are mostly plant-based, but dinners was always a real issue for us. So, one thing I like to do is make it fun. If you didn't grow up vegetarian, you don't have a whole repertoire of vegetarian meals at your fingertips. So I had to go, and I used a lot of my time during that year I took off to find some really easy, delicious vegetarian meals. And then I'd post about it on social media. I have an Instagram account. I let people know, here's the one I made this week that is going to go into our regular, repeat list because it's so good and easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. So that's a really great thing to do. And here's another thing which was eye-opening to me, the concept of the carbon intensity of different foods. So probably most people know, I was aware that beef was a really big problem. And in fact, I didn't know that the cattle industry is responsible for 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That is huge. So, but here's the really interesting thing, that if you actually look at the difference between different food groups, beef, 1 kilogram of beef is responsible for 60 kilograms of carbon emissions. I don't expect you to memorize that, but here's what's really interesting. Chicken, 1 kilogram of chicken is responsible for only 6 kilograms, so 10 times less. So if you're not going to go and have a vegetarian meal tonight, but you choose chicken instead of beef, you're making a really big difference. And if you choose wild-caught salmon, that's only 3 kilograms of carbon emissions for 1 kilogram of salmon. So 1 kilogram is like a little over 2 pounds, right? So instead of 60 for beef, you're at 3 for salmon. So not as low as around 1 for lentils, but still really a big, big difference. So that's how I try to think of it, is every meal is a choice about how carbon intensive I want to be, and there's some pretty good choices out there to choose from. So, choose carefully, and if you want to splurge on a hamburger or a steak, go ahead, but just be aware, if you limit how often you splurge on that, you are going to be doing the planet a whole lot of good.
Stephanie, I got 2 good ones for you, boy, and I was just kind of waiting to give them. It hit me upside the head. Okay. Now, if a single parent, here's a twofold situation. If a single parent is on a fixed income, is it easy for that family to live with a zero waste? And then the other part of my question is, listening to you, I come from the Midwest, and at my age group, we had a problem, or it's not a problem, but we kind of grew up eating the way our parents did. And you understand? We ate how our parents ate. That's what we did. Now that we're older, now we hit with this climate situation, and the things that's going on now, the drought, the shortage of food and all this and that. It forces you to have to change how we eat, health-wise, and all that stuff has been affected. And, I just grew up with a lot of beef. Nobody knew any different. I mean, that's just what we had. Coming out of Texas, we had beef. We had chicken. I mean, that's just, we ate what your parents put on the table, and if you didn't eat that, guess what? You don't eat. So, So now, I guess I'm thinking in a broader sense, there's a lot of people in my age group, should I say, that are caught up eating the way that they were raised. So therefore, that's how they feed their children. Seem like we have to work on changing their mindset or educating them to what's happening today in order to see some change on that front.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was kind of left to what you were talking about, but it just kind of slapped you upside the head because we always think about we're a product of our environment. We know what we know based on who we are around and how we were raised.
Yes. So let me start with that part of your question first. I completely agree with you. And by the way, I'm also from the Midwest, Minnesota, and as I said, I was raised that it's a meal if there's some meat as part of the meal. In fact, was usually the biggest
two meat
portion of the plate. Yeah, exactly. Why do one when you can do two? I raised my son exactly that way because, as you said, you do what was done with you as you were growing up, and so it's kind of a jolt if you decide you want to change. It's almost like a cultural change in your household.
It is.
And
it is. That's the word that I was missing. That's the word that I was missing. It is a cultural change.
Yeah. So I don't want to say it's easy, and that's why I say, just do what you can, and if you can start to incorporate one vegetarian meal a week, then maybe that's heroic for your family. It was for my family initially. And then if you can move that up to 2 or 3, or as I said, my current goal is 4 a week, then that's great. But I think it's what you said quite a while ago about awareness raising. Once you realize, you and I didn't realize when we were growing up and when I was raising my son that beef was such a problem, that meat was such a contributor to climate change. So now I know. So now what am I going to do about it, right? That's the question. And that's why I think we need to not be hard on people. We need to just show them, here's why this is an issue, and here's some ideas for how to do something a little bit differently. Again, 80-20, not 100%. Just get part of the way there. And if everyone got part of the way there, we'd be making such a difference. Let me get to the first part of your question on, a single parent, on a low income, probably very strapped for time. It's like anything else. You do what you can. And I think any mother wants to feed their kids well, and it's a question of how much time do you have. I used to do this when I was working crazy hours. I'd cook because I knew I wanted to not get takeout every night or whatever, convenience food. So I would cook on the weekends. I'd make big vats of things like, chili or spaghetti sauce or something that we would eat for a few days. I would freeze some of it, and then on a really busy night, I would defrost that meal. So when you cook at home, obviously you're helping create more family healthy meals. But if you want to get at the waste problem, a lot of it has to come from cooking yourself. And if you want to get at the increasing your plant-based meals, you can get convenience food, you can get takeout, but it's easier when you do it at home. But it's a question of time, and that's a balancing act. And so, again, I think we all just do what we can. If we are in a community that has recycling, again, about 60% of us do, then we do well if we're using that system right, recycling right. If we have a community that has clean drinking water, we would do well by, using our own bottles and refilling them with tap water. But if you don't have access to those things, then you haven't committed a crime. You're just doing the things that are possible in your context, in your community, and that's all we can ask, I think.
Very well said. I agree with you 100% because in our society today, I guess if you're too forceful and too pushy with it, you're going to basically turn them off, and they're going to do just the opposite, just out of spite.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's true. Well, Stephanie, talk a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so thank you. My book is pretty much what we've been talking about. I realized after I took this time, I left my 25-year career at the World Bank Group. I took this time off. I did a lot of research. I visited all the recycling facilities in my region. I set out to find this 80-20, as we said, right? What are the easy, impactful things individuals could do to reduce their carbon and waste footprint? And once I figured out what those were, I wanted to tell everybody I knew. So I wrote the book because I wanted to get the word out, because I thought if I didn't know, as I said, I was heading up climate change and I wasn't aware of the food waste problem, for example, and what a large contribution that was making to climate change and how much the individual could impact that. So once I figured out these are the really easy things individuals can do, I wanted to get the word out. And it's a short book, like all the books in the series. I think you've had Tim Ward, our publisher, on your show.
Yeah.
You know, he set us out on a mission to set records in the publishing world of writing our books in over last summer, basically. And so I think I wrote mine in 5 weeks, and it was published a month or two later, so set all the records. So it's a short book. It's 80 pages, and it lays out what we've been talking about, some ideas for how you can approach the food waste problem, the enriching your plant-rich diet, reducing. I give all the different ways that I recommend for reducing plastic in your life, and why we should care about reducing plastic in our lives. So it's a pretty easy read, and it doesn't lecture. I want people to leave feeling empowered. My biggest fantasy would be people put the book down after reading it, and they immediately start doing something in their life differently, and then they tell someone about it. That would be my nirvana.
And I think that's possible, and I think that's definitely going to happen after hearing you speak on this and listening to the show, because now I'm seeing a carton of water instead of a bottle of water.
Well, that makes my day then. That's great to hear, Lamont.
You definitely got a place there. So let everybody know where they can go get your book.
Yeah, it's available really anywhere, on Amazon, but also through independent bookstores. My local indie bookstore carries it. It's available through as an ebook or as a paperback. So just Google it and it will come up. Zero Waste Living, the 80-20 Way.
Okay, well, you want to tell our listeners or how they can contact you?
Yes, I would love that, and I'm always available to answer any questions people have. In fact, I love answering people's questions. I'm at zerowastendc.com. That's my website. People can email me at stephanie@zerowastendc.com. And on Instagram and Facebook, I post at Zero Waste in DC. I post my weekly vegetarian cook-along that we talked about. I give recycling tips. I really want to make it easy for people. So I put as much out there that I think would be helpful to me. It would have been helpful to me a few years ago. I tried to put out to the world.
Well, for some reason, God only works when he's ready for it to work. So
That's true.
Now he's ready for it. Right now he's ready for it to work.
I hope so. I think it's time.
Well, it is. I'm sure it is. Well, we're down to the last couple of minutes, Steph, and I so much appreciate you. I know you've done wonders for me, because I know I've been a bad boy over the years, and as I've gotten older, I've tried to change the way that I eat and stuff, and I only got one request when I pass away, is that I don't come back as a chicken. Chicken has a zero life capacity, boy. You definitely got a short lifespan, so I don't want to come back as a chicken.
Yeah, but you shouldn't say you're a bad boy. I mean, we all are doing the best we can, and we all have been shown the convenience of so many of these things, and it's not easy to step back from all of it. But I think the first step in making a switch is just, as you talked about a few times, having that awareness. Once you have that awareness, then what do you do with it? That's the magic is, okay, I know something, so how do I want to do things differently? So no bad boy.
Yeah, that awareness thing is just so powerful, and it's awesome, and it's simple if you think about it, but you know, it is somewhat of a cultural thing. I think we all kind of grew up a certain way. We learned how to eat a certain way, and I think we need to realize it's a different time. You know, we're living in a different age. Things are different than they were when our parents had us, and you know, it's a concentrated effort. It's something that we have to work on daily going forward.
Yes, well said.
Yes, it's just something, you know, and I think about it. I say, because I find myself slipping, I've been doing this for years, but I like it. So everything that you like, of course, you know, I know, our listeners know everything we like is not good for us. So.
But there's a lot of joy in this, too.
Yeah, we definitely going to have to work on that for sure. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Tim for bringing you to us and stuff. And you guys are doing some fantastic work, and I'm definitely going to have to get a copy of your book. So I don't know much I don't know much about being a vegetarian or something, but, you know, you're never too old to learn, and I'm willing to learn. My brain is always like a sponge. So
I can see that. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Lamont. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, man, it's been a pleasure for me as well, and I'm sure our listeners are going to learn. And, see, that's my main mission, too, you know, is that each one teach one. If somebody could walk away and learn something that they didn't know the day before, they're ahead.
I love that. Each one teach one.
Each one teach one.
I love that. I've just written it down.
Okay, my friend. Again, you take care. Keep your family safe. Continue to produce good food for them. And I'm just mad because I'm not getting none of it. But continue to take care of them. And I wish you the best. Take care, Steph.
Thank you. I wish you the best as well. Thanks so much.
All right. For those who just joined us, if you came in any parts of this show and you want to hear it in the beginning, of course you can do that. I'm sure you won't have any problems getting to it. It's available worldwide, not around the corner from your house at the liquor store, but worldwide in about 2 minutes. And then if you still have problems, ask your mama, ask your daddy, ask the man across the street, the guy that work at a gas station or the guy that work at a supermarket on the corner. Somebody will be able to tell you where you can go hear the show. So you have no excuse not to hear it, not to listen, not to comply, and you heard it from me, yours truly, Lamont Patterson. This is a World Movement Enterprise production, Can I Play a Play? Please join us next week, same time, and we thank you so very much for joining us. We love you. Stay safe. And take care of yourself. See you next week. Bye.
Yeah, old school. That's what I'm talking about. Listen, this ain't for everybody. Some of y'all need to hear this. I know you're in the trenches fighting, but check it out. I'm going to put it down like this so I can help the saints understand. Everything you're going through is all part of the master plan. Or what? You thought because you got saved everything was going to be peaches and cream? You better wake up, son. Don't nothing come to a sleeper but a dream. Faith without works is dead. Read your Bible. You know what it said. He who don't work don't eat. Blackers don't get fed. Yeah, Jesus said he who puts his hand to the plow looks back the same ain't fit. Some of y'all ain't been in the trenches 5 minutes and you about ready to quit. I ain't mad at you. I'm just hitting you with the real. If you died for me and I was still tripping, now how you think that make you feel? Check this out. Deep game. This here's deep. Some of y'all ain't sawing nothing but you started trying to reach. But unto him who is able to possess your fathers by his glory. Struggles might be part of your testimony, but it ain't the end of the story. Now, the point is, this was prophesied way back in the day. Choir, sing your hook right here and see if the church can relate.
I know we can make it. Oh, we can make it. I know good and well. God can work it out. He'll work it out. Work it out. Yeah, he'll work it out. I know we can make it. We can make it. I know good and well. God can work it out. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Yeah.
Thinking not strange, the fiery prophet to try you. You say, why you? But your church say, what would Jesus do? Why you asking if he ain't trying to do what he's saying? He told you he was going to have tribulations, but you thought he was playing. 1 minute you tell her how